Hello and welcome to Some of My Friends Read Comics. We've got Vince.
I am Thor, the god of thunder.
Terrible. We've got Chris.
Sorry, I don't have anything.
That's fine. It's Thor. It's not exactly a catchphrasey kind of character, right? Hi, I'm Kia. Welcome to the show. Yeah, we're reading about some Thor today. Cool. Specifically, we are reading Walt Simonson's run from, when did this start? 1983? We've talked about Walt Simonson before on the show. We read some of his Fantastic Four. He seems to very often do these things where he just writes and draws the comics on his own. He did that with Fantastic Four, and he's doing it with these. Chris, do you know how long he wrote Thor for?
For a long time, because we're reading the start, and I think he doesn't do the art all the way through, but it goes from 337 to I don't think it gets to 400, but it goes to like 385 to 390. So it's like 50 issues or 60 issues. It's a long run.
Yeah, it's a pretty decent sized run. And yeah, it's always often referred to as one of the more memorable runs of Thor. And so, yeah, we were excited to check it out. We read the first 7 issues, so 337 up to 343. Because, very timely. There's a new Thor movie coming out, right? That's exciting. And even more timely, I was just in Iceland with all the Vikings that live there, hanging out with Vikings. It was really cool. I told them I read Thor comics, and they told me to get the fuck out.
You couldn't give them a warrior's death. That's why they didn't.
A true warrior's death. So let's jump right into this stuff. I guess, we've talked about Thor a little bit in the past, but laying some of the groundwork for stuff that's different from the movies, in case you're coming to this and you're like, what's going on? So Thor has a human secret identity kind of deal. That's his whole origin. He was a doctor, Donald Blake, who found this stick and he whacked it and it turned into Mjolnir, and he turns into Thor. And so he goes back and forth between Donald Blake and Thor, and it's kind of stupid.
Yeah, it's not like a Peter Parker, Clark Kent like secret identity. Like he's more like a Bruce Banner type where he turns into another like a weak dude.
Or Shazam, Captain Marvel, where he turns into a little kid. He turns into a sickly doctor,
right?
Which is dumb.
I
don't want to see Chris Hemsworth turn into like a sickly doctor. I want him to be like a buff doctor, and like you're not a buff doctor. You're just a buff
this was later retconned really bizarrely into being like Donald Blake was actually Thor, trapped in the mortal realm to learn a lesson about humility. So then he actually never did. It's really stupid.
It doesn't really matter. It's just like back then everyone needed a secret identity. It's just sort of, the comics tropes. But
step one, Walt Simonson's like, let's get rid of that.
Well, pretty much. Well, we'll get to that. But yeah, Donald Blake goes bye-bye very fast. Right.
And I haven't read the issues, but I did read the summaries of the issues right before this. Apparently Jane Foster, who is, I guess, the current Thor, Natalie Portman.
Mm-hmm.
She was doing the same thing with Sif, where like Sif would kind of take over her body in the mortal world.
Whatever. The fuck?
And then basically right before Simonson's run, they had a 2-issue arc where they're like, well, this has been the status quo for a little while, but that it's not true. It was all a trick. And Jane Foster's spirit is really trapped somewhere, so we got to go get it.
What?
So
That's weird.
So they had just fixed having, Sif and Jane Foster's, doing this same thing, and then they're like, "Well, we'll do it for Thor too."
Yeah, that makes sense. But none of what you said makes sense. But
so instead of having 2 powerful ladies, they're just 1 powerful lady. Is that what they decided?
Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
So anyways, this whole thing starts out with Nick Fury. It's a pretty good way to start a story. You need somebody to tell you to go somewhere.
This is the wrong... Like, I know that Nick Fury is like exposition material, but like, I don't need Nick Fury to show up to tell Thor about what's going on in Asgard in space. Like...
it's not in Asgard. It's like in Earth space, right?
Yeah, I feel like Odin could tell him that though.
Yeah. But he needs Nick Fury later, so it's a good way to set it up. Plus, Nick Fury is just like, hey, by the way, I know you're Donald Blake. Don't worry, I won't tell nobody.
And they tell him that by abducting him, like putting a bag over his head and throwing him into a car.
Yep. When he's just in the park.
Yep.
It's a good. I mean, I wish Nick Fury would kidnap me, send me out on missions like that. I wouldn't complain. But he's like, hey, Thor, there's this alien. And it's attacking, and we need you to go take care of it. And so Thor goes out, and this is the first appearance of Beta Ray Bill, who you maybe haven't heard of. He's a pretty cool character, though. He's like this brown alien dude, like very robotic, kind of like a long horse face. Looks very weird.
He looks a little like General Grievous from Star Wars.
Yeah, a little bit
3.
General Grievous. Yeah. He keeps calling Thor a demon. Like back away, demon. They do their fight thing, and during this fight, Thor is like separated from his hammer for too long. He turns back to Donald Blake, and Beta Ray Bill wins, and he takes the stick, and he turns into Thor, and it's like, wait, what? Nobody can hold the hammer, and like out of nowhere, it's just this weird, bizarre-looking alien is now wearing Thor's clothes. And then Odin shows up up in the sky, and he says, hey, Thor, I need you at home, like ASAP. And Beta Ray Bill disappears. And Donald Blake is there alone. He's like, Dad, what's going on? And he's all alone, no hammer, no powers, no nothing.
It is a really good ending to the first issue.
Yeah, it's like it just sets up a whole lot of like, wait a minute, what the fuck is going on here? It left me very intrigued. So let's just keep right on going. Oh, go ahead, Chris.
Just imagine, back in the day, if you had 30 days to be like, oh man, what's going to happen to Thor?
Yeah.
Well,
it's kind of sold out in the next issue, but
well, yeah.
And it's also like it's Simonson's first issue, so like you're dealing with like the bullshit that you just had in the previous plot, Chris. And now you're like, this is this new guy. This isn't like this is a gangbusters first issue. Especially, I feel like for 83, but I always like underestimate 1983. We've read a lot of good comics from the early to mid 80s. So I'm like, there's been a lot of good comics like pre-Watchmen, pre-Dark Knight, pre-Daredevil that I'm like, man, like between this and Roger Stern, like I'm really pleased with a lot of these Marvel comics here. But yeah, this is a hell of a story. Beta Ray Bill, I do think his name is weird though.
Yeah, I was reading, like, I was trying to figure out why did he name it, so I was looking online. Apparently, he just wanted to give this guy a very common name, almost named him Beta Ray Jones. Too many Joneses in the Marvel Universe already. So he just went with Bill, because it was a funny name for a weird-looking alien.
It's weird because like later, like, Sif or whoever's, like, talking to Thor, and they're like, so Bill wants to do this. And I'm like, this is a fucking horse monster. That's, Like,
I thought you were going to say he should be more of an alpha Ray Bill.
The Beta Ray is also weird. Like, it's weird because, like, you hear, like, Walt Simonson's run's really good. Beta Ray Bill is awesome. I remember reading internet post boards, in the mid-2000s, and they talk about Beta Ray Bill, and I'm like, this is not what I pictured based off of the name.
Yeah, like, if you told me Beta Ray Bill, I would think it's like a fish cowboy.
I would think like Adam Strange.
Like Adam Strange. Okay, interesting.
Like with the kind of helmet, the white and red, with the kind of like jetpack, little Flash Gordon-y. Like that's what I would.
The real retro kind of, yeah. Well, anyway, he's none of those things, and now he's in Asgard, and he thinks everyone there is demons, and he's gonna fuck shit up for a while. So he's wrecking everything until Odin uses his massive powers to take the hammer away. He traps him in a bubble, and he's like, "All right, we got to get to the bottom of this." He finds Thor and zaps Thor up to Asgard. And he's like, oh, okay, I see what's going on. All right, well, why don't you two just have a fight to the death, and the winner can get Mjolnir. Pretty cool, huh? And so they have a fight. It ends with Thor being pretty close to death, but Beta Ray Bill saves him, and they go back to the main hall, and he declares himself the winner. And so afterwards, Odin has an idea. He says, okay, well, he kind of goes off on like his own little secret thing. Basically, he's making a new weapon for Beta Ray Bill because he's decided that guy is worthy enough, and he saved his son's life. And so rather than just trying to figure out who should get the hammer, he's just going to make a new one for Bill. Which is pretty neat.
I like this whole kind of Beta Ray Bill concept, though. Yeah. That he's not like a standard villain. He's not here to like really like wreck Asgard. I mean, it seems like that, but really he's like, I have some problems with my planet. I need to stop the bad guys invading my planet. So I'm going to steal Mjolnir. Like, that's what I'm going to do. And then that's how I'll beat him. And so the only reason he needs to beat Thor is so that he can have the super weapon and then go save his planet. And I'm like, that's an interesting, like, character take, you know, for like kind of like a villain. Like, I hadn't seen it up to this point, and I bet it was kind of mind-blowing also in 83. So I like it. And it instantly allows like Thor to be like, well, let's team up, bro. And then Odin's like, I'll make you a cool hammer too. And we'll all be best friends. And you get to be the new Thor for a little while. It'll be cool.
Mm-hmm. I also like that we kind of learned that he is essentially his planet's RoboCop, where they like took his, they built a robo body and picked the best warrior to put like their mind into it. And so he's not even a human anymore. He never was human, you know, an alien. He's not an alien anymore. He's like a robot alien. Which is even creepier. Also, this whole time, Sif has been just kind of like begging for action, looking for something to do. And in order to get the trolls to help make this weapon, wait, was it the trolls? I don't know. It's some other race of people on Asgard. They need somebody to go fight for them. It has to be a woman. So like, all right, Sif, here's something for you to go do. Go fight this troll. And also, somewhere throughout this whole thing, she starts falling in love with Beta Ray Bill a little bit. I don't know. Does that go anywhere? It seemed like it kind of just like jumps up out of nowhere. Like, oh, okay, she sees him for his beauty on the inside.
Well, after spoiler alert, Beta Ray Bill leaves after the first 4 issues. And Sif is also like.
I mean, he comes back. Spoiler alert for further in the run.
Yeah, but you know, I think Sif is gone because I think later in the 5 through 6 that we ran, like 341 through 343, Thor's like, I wish Sif was here, but she's off with Beta Ray Bill. So, meh.
Oh, okay.
He mentioned
so they are off together, I guess. Yeah. So anyways, this was a foolish.
She also, I guess, because Sif had been dating Thor, kind of. She sees what looks like Thor making out with a redheaded, I don't know, also Asgardian, who I don't think we've been introduced to before.
Is that Lorelai?
Yes. This was her first appearance. And so Sif is like, well, Thor is being unfaithful to me, so I'm going to be pals with this hideous horseman.
There's this weird side plot running around with, first Loki's kind of involved with it, but then he's kind of forgotten about it, the whole thing. But Lorelai, who is the Enchantress's sister. Enchantress is a pretty big Thor villain, and I guess Lorelai is just more of the same. I know Lorelai did appear in an episode of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., kind of doing this whole same thing, though. So I'm in on the comic book world, no.
She looks a lot like Black Canary from Justice League International.
She's just like sort of a generic lady who makes people fall in love with her, and that's it. Without any real purpose. I don't know. She's just kind of there to fuck shit up for a little while. But anyways, back to this hammer issue. I really did like this whole hammer thing. It's fun to kind of see how much it takes to be able to make a new weapon, and like they have to go through and like, oh, pour it just right, don't miss. All right, Odin, put in your enchantment now while we're pouring the molten lava, all that. And finally, they present Bill with the new weapon, Stormbreaker. So now, in issue 340, they both got weapons. Time to go off and fight these demons. It's a good time. They don't beat everyone. Also, they find out that a lot of Bill's people are dead, which kind of sucks. Mm-hmm. But, they go back to Asgard. And before they send Bill off for good, Odin says, hey, by the way, I switched the enchantment. Thor, your hammer isn't enchanted the way it was before anymore. Now Bill's is. Bill, you can transform back and forth from your robot self to like your regular alien self. And he's like, oh, he's so happy. It's kind of a sweet moment to see him be able to do that. But also, like, Thor at one point asked, but what about Donald Blake? And Odin just doesn't answer the question. What happens to Donald Blake? He's just gone. Weird.
I mean, I really do like, I do like where it is later. It's like, well, I'm no longer Donald Blake, but I still love living on Earth, so I gotta find a place to live.
Yeah, so this is like this takes a sharp turn here. Those first four issues, I really thought were amazing. I love the whole Beta Ray Bill story. After this, I'm just like, all right, what's going on here now? Because in issue 341,
No, I will say it's the
Okay, go ahead.
the last page of 340 is
Okay.
another where it's like if I was waiting 28 days to read this comic, I'd be like, oh shit, this is gonna rule.
Oh,
Because
right.
yeah, it's just some like boat out there in the St. Lawrence, and literally just a giant dragon hand tears the boat in half, and is like, "Where's Thor? I want to fight him."
He's a pretty cool dragon. What's his name? Fafnir? Is that it?
Fafnir.
I think that's it.
Yeah, something like
Fafnir,
that.
something like that. So basically, the next three issues are going to be all about fighting this weird dragon dude. But first, Thor's got to get back to Earth, and he's got to get himself set up with a secret identity. What? We just got rid of his secret identity. Why does he need a fucking secret identity?
He's
So he
got to
goes to
live
Nick
somewhere.
Fury. Yeah, that's true. He's got to live somewhere. He goes to Nick Fury, and they make a whole bunch of Clark Kent jokes, and they dress him up in glasses, and
I do like that Nick Fury is like, I was worried the shoulders would be a problem. Yeah. Like he's like I thought we could. No, you're too buff, dude. Like we can't hide that.
what is his new name that he picks? Sigurd Jarlson? Is
Yeah.
that it?
Which I think he
Um,
was for a while. I think we read was it Avengers Under Siege he had that name?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, you're right. I think he did.
He had a big old beard at that time. He's clean
Big
shaven
old
in these
beard.
books.
Yeah, he's clean shaven. He's Sigurd Jarlson. They even there's a Clark Kent character that he runs into.
It's a reporter named
And
Clark.
It's a reporter.
That
Yeah,
he knocks
it's a reporter
knocks
named
over
Clark.
and he's like worried that he hurt him and Clark's like, I'm good. I'm fine.
Yeah, and Nick Fury is using it as a test of oh, is this guy going to recognize him as Thor? Nope. Okay, we're okay.
There's a great, I think it's Marvel Appendix to the handbook or whatever of the Marvel Universe. It's a great website where you find obscure characters, and they try to make sense of them. And so there is a page for Clark Kent Marvel Universe version because he shows up surprisingly regularly, mostly in cameos like this.
It'd be fun to try and track his appearances, see what he's doing.
I can't lose.
So-
You can't lose Clark Kent this month. He's over in Uncanny X-Men.
Meanwhile, while this is going on, Odin, over these next few issues, Odin is just there's some weird shit coming, and I guess that's coming up later in the storyline.
That's
But I
what's-
like this. Go ahead.
That's what's cool about this this arc and what kind of Simonson does in general is he's seeding like long plots, short plots, all in his same issue. So we haven't mentioned it, but there's a page an issue where there's a dude striking a hammer, and at the end of it is who is this guy? And it's a dude in shadows, which I usually don't like, but I like it here because I really do want to
But
know.
yeah, it's done well because this dude in shadows is doing something significantly different and not just watching everything that we've already seen.
He's banging on something, he's getting ready. It's very much like Doomsday and Death of
Yeah.
Superman, which I really loved as a kid. Just the punching, and it does that. It always ends with Doom at the very end, and I'm like, who is it? It doesn't look like Doctor Doom, but maybe it's Doctor Doom.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
I don't think it's Dr. Doom.
He also appears to be 50 feet tall, or maybe they're just very tiny guys watching him.
It could be anything. It could be anything, Chris. I don't
Yeah.
know. It couldn't be. I kind of want to read to find out. I don't want it spoiled for me, but
All right, so let's keep going. So
it's not Fing Fang Foom. I know that. Because otherwise, it would say Foom.
Boom. So Thor decides he needs a job. He goes to this construction site, and they instantly shit starts going wrong because Lorelei is up there trying to seduce Thor, and so she plays a damsel in distress that Thor saves. Also, the dragon attacks.
Yeah,
out of nowhere.
Fafnir sees right through Thor's secret identity.
Yeah.
Hits him on his first day on the job. You're Thor, bro. I'm gonna eat you. I also like that Thor couldn't find an apartment in Manhattan, so he had to move to Brooklyn. Is it hard to get to move?
Yeah, not even Shield could get him an apartment in Manhattan. It was a fun joke. So of course they fight for a little while at this construction site, and Fafnir runs away. Even though he didn't have to. Apparently he had the upper hand. He was doing all right, but Fafnir's like, I'm coming back later. But this construction site is all fucked up now, so they do need more help, so they hire Thor. Hooray, he has a job now. Congratulations, Thor, you have a job.
Well, and throughout this issue, also what it's like every now and then he's like, he hears somebody calling for his voice.
Yeah.
In Viking, but he doesn't know what it is. And that's what I like about this run, is that like we're seeding next issue's plot here. So that's providing the impetus, like, so you don't have to have that going on in the first few pages of next issue. It's already happened. So then you can go find this dude.
And it doesn't feel forced. It feels like interesting. Like, okay, there's something interesting going on. It would come in kind of naturally and slowly. I do like that. This voice that he's been hearing is the last Viking. It's this idea that all the Vikings, had their beliefs of the Norse gods and such. And so the last one is the voice that Thor can hear. And so Thor, in the next issue, 342, goes out to find this last Viking. And learns that this guy wants to have a warrior's death so that he can go up to Valhalla. He kind of tricks Thor first to try and get him to kill him because he wants to die at the hands of a god, but wouldn't really count because he has to die in battle. And so Thor's like, no, listen, you don't have to cheat the system. Just come with me, help me fight this dragon. We'll give you a proper warrior's battle. And you can die while you're fighting this dragon. How about that? And so that's what they do. The next couple of issues, they go out and fight that dragon, and he gets sent up to Valhalla. It's a pretty good time. Pretty cut and dry.
Yeah,
and
it's just really well done. Like, this is what, like, I really like Simonson's plotting here because, he's doing this thing where it's like that first issue, he's fighting the dragon, and then he hears the voices, and then he goes and fights this like last Viking dude, and then like he finds out like, oh, well, that's your problem. That's where the issue kind of ends. So that the next issue, and there's also, you see the dragon being like, where the fuck is Thor? I want to eat him. It's like, we don't know where Thor is. I'm sorry. And so that's happening in issue 342. So then for 343, that's when they decide like, well, you can be my shield bearer, last Viking, and then we'll go fight this dragon. You'll die in battle. You'll get to go to heaven. It'll be perfect. And it's just, it begets each kind of like, the dragon showdown is already seeded in the previous issue, so we don't have to waste our time with that. I really like that.
Yeah.
And then I like the shield bearer dude. It was a cool little story, and how he killed the dragon was cool. I like that. Yeah.
It was nice. I didn't like it as much as the first 4 issues because I missed Beta Ray Bill, and so I was a little sad, and so I kind of I went through them a little more quickly.
No, I agree.
I mean, it brought back fond memories of fighting Godzilla in our way earlier podcast episode.
Yeah.
Because I mean, Fafnir is like a Godzilla-like monster, and it is really cool. I mean, it's weird that I don't think it had really been done before to have him be fighting this I don't know, like 200-foot tall dragon man who's just like wandering around New York. It's just a kind of a cool synthesis of. Like, my problem with Thor comics is usually he's often like Lord of the Rings world, which I'm like, well, I don't care about that.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like I could not care less if he's fighting some cave troll guy. Like, Thor's gonna win, and also I don't care. But then if he's in Earth, he's usually fighting like the Absorbing Man or like some Hulk villain, or he's with the Avengers. And it's not really, there's nothing unique to Thor about any of that stuff. It's just, if he's fighting the Juggernaut, like anybody could fight the Juggernaut. So I thought it was cool that, he found a way to make this like a uniquely Thor thing that he, brings in the shield bearer and he's got to fight this dragon. And it's just kind of it's not something that I think you'd had seen a lot up to this point.
Yeah.
He just does a really good job of just using all that Norse mythology, but not just sort of resting on it and retelling it, and he does a good job of building upon it and telling his own stories with it, which is not an easy thing to do.
Right.
Yeah,
I like. Oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
I like, Fafnir is mostly in this story to just be like this rampaging monster guy, but he's not stupid. It keeps the like mythology of dragons being kind of clever. so that like when Lorelai goes and finds him, Lorelai is like, well, I'm gonna put him under my like persuasion powers, and he's gonna do whatever I say. And then the dragon is like, what are you doing? You know, like I have dragon powers, I can hypnotize people.
Yeah, I can't. I'm not falling for that.
Yeah, this is all just a really cool. The idea of how Thor is used by Simonson in these stories is really, really good, and I think that's why I'm excited for the new movie, because it's deciding to be like more of a space sci-fi comedy, which Thor can do. Weirdly, like I like the aesthetic of like swords and sandals with laser guns, and Thor gives me that in a way that a lot of other things don't. Does that make sense?
Swords, sandals, and laser guns, man. Yeah, that's like that's Star Wars and Thor. That's it.
I mean, it really is. I mean, I like I like a lot of things when they're shooting different colored laser beams at each other. I think that's why I liked like X-Men Apocalypse so much. I'm like, everybody's just shooting bright colored lights at each other. This is what I need. And I'm on board. My biggest problem with these stories though is that there's not much like Thor to me. Like Thor as a character, I don't really see what he's going through, and he doesn't really seem to care. Like I think the narrative heavy lifting was a little more done by the Shield Bearer, and it was his story and his arc, and Thor was just kind of there to help him along. But even in Beta Ray Bill, like I didn't get a sense of how Thor was affected.
Yeah, I cared more about Beta Ray Bill. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Like,
Well, and I think I think it works, but it's also like the Batman trick of like Thor as a character is kind of, you know, like I don't think he's that interesting.
I agree.
So if you frame your stories around like, oh, but this is an interesting thing. So it's like, you know, he spends time, and we haven't talked about it, but like with Balder and Volstagg and all these other characters that we've seen in the movies, but they're just kind of like, you know, friend number 3 a lot. I mean, they're a group in the movies, and that, you know, it's kind of nice, but like they introduce the supporting cast, like you learn what Sif's deal is. You have Volstagg. I like that scene where Volstagg, who's mostly just a comic relief fat guy, basically like sits a guy down because he wants to like kill Balder, and he's like, "Let me tell you a story," and the guy's like, "Hey, you fat oaf, I want to do this," and he's like, "No, seriously, like, let me talk to you for a second." And it's just kind of cool that he's able to. You see more of his personality in that he's just like this, you know, big, you know, charming guy, but he's also like not an idiot, you know, that he's this big blowhard, but in the service of like, he helps his friends and he does this stuff. And so like Thor, like you said, is kind of a blank slate. I mean, I guess, you know, he's reckless and just kind of charges in and fights people.
right.
But beyond that, I mean...
But like, because I mean, there is a story in like Thor losing the power of Thor to another dude. Like there's an interesting story there.
But it gets washed over pretty quickly.
Yeah, but the thing is, like, I like this more, and this is because like usual Thor stories, I'm like, I don't give a shit. Like I like Chris Hemsworth's personality, which doesn't reflect Thor at all in the comics that I've read. Maybe the Ultimates, but I don't think this Thor as conceived is really a good like lead character. Like he's a good like side character, but he's not really a great lead character. I don't know how he was sustained through so many comics unless you do what Simonson's doing here and tell stories about other people well. And I guess Perez did this with Wonder Woman also.
Right.
Yeah. I've read some of those old Thor comics, and I don't know. Maybe it is just sort of resting on that sort of like, oh, super strong person fighting super strong things, power as come by the power.
Well, and I mean, and the Kirby art concept for Thor is fucking cool too. Like, I don't know how much like Simonson's really pioneering this, or he's doing it really cool, but like the Rainbow Bridge is a really cool image.
Yeah,
and I like how Asgard looks, and I like the colors in it. And I know that the Omnibus was recolored, and I'm gonna bet that Marvel Unlimited is using the Omnibus color recoloring.
Yeah. The Marvel Unlimited coloring I do not like.
Oh, really? I liked it. I thought it was really.
No, it's too much. I guess I'm a purist because I read the what did I read first? It was, I think, the Walt Simonson collection version. That was like the trade paperback.
Is that the one with the white cover? I always saw that at Half Price Books.
Yeah, I think so. And there's like 5 of them or 6 of them. And it had, I mean, the first one I think had these first 6 issues. And so that's what I'm used to. And that's, I mean, I think that's just literally they took the print from, the
Original.
the comic run. And then this one, I was like, oh, this digital coloring kind of, I mean, it in a way it's nice and it looks good. But in a way, I think it sort of cleans up Simonson's art a little too much, if that makes sense. Because and we did another one of his art before. His art has a very kind of Frank Miller-y kind of like scratchiness to it.
Yeah, and it's like messy and neat at the same time in a way that just works really well.
Yeah, I think they're kind of smoothing it over a little too much sometimes. So I think most of it looks fine, but sometimes I would see a page and I would be like, this looks really like cartoony now.
Yeah, I could get that. I'd have to see the original in order to really compare. I might have to try and look for that. But I cannot say without having seen it. So this thing goes on for another 50 issues or so. Vince, it sounds like you want to keep reading?
I think I do. I don't know if I'm going to pick this up immediately because we're going to read some other stuff. And I've got a lot of video games coming out, like Super Mario Odyssey at the end of the week.
Woo-hoo.
So I feel like my comic reading is going to take a big dip for a little while.
Yeah,
But I like this. I like this. It kind of, for some reason, it just made me want to read more Roger Stern Spider-Man, though. And just,
fair enough.
I don't know why. It just kind of kicked that like mid-'80s like fun comic to me. Fun, bright colored comic. I'm like, I just should read some more Roger Stern. So I may go do that instead.
I also want to read it. I don't know if I'm going to have time to, though. Yeah, that's it's going to be low on the priority list, but if I ever get around to it, maybe I will.
I mean, I think it's really good, and I'm not like you, Vince. I don't think Thor is a great character in general. I think he works better, like in the Avengers or something like that, where he's, bouncing off other characters that are more interesting than him. But I think Simonson does a great job, and like you said, he seeds so many stories because, I mean, obviously, so Loki is around, but he's not really doing anything at the moment. Lorelei, of course, has a plan to seduce Thor, which, spoiler alert, she will seduce Thor.
She just did at the last page. That door locked. Click.
The door locked. Yeah, give him a back rub.
Yep. So she seduces Thor. There's also the next issue after the ones we just read is where the Cask of the Ancient Winters comes in, which is where the just butchering that they did of Thor: The Dark World. Malekith is introduced as a like ridiculous, I think it's a really cool design that they took all the life out of in the movie. So he's like this, kind of fairy character or elf character who looks like a Lord of the Rings character, which normally I'm like, this isn't great, but the fact that he looks so crazy.
He's a space elf with laser guns, and they fucked him up in the movie. I don't understand it.
Yeah, they made it so boring in the movie. They're like, well, we want to make him look like a growling, like the bad guy from Star Trek.
Let's cast Doctor Who also. That'll be fun. And then let him not speak English. That's a great idea.
Yeah, so there's that storyline coming up, and then obviously right after that is the Surtur storyline, which is a big one. So, and then there's, I think it's 350, where Thor and like Beta Ray Bill, and basically he has his whole team of Thor buddies goes up and fights like a big battle. So
and by Thor buddies, you mean Frog Thor, right?
Frog Thor better be in this, or I'm gonna be pissed.
I think that's the other underrated thing about Simonson's run is it's really funny. Like it's surprising like how it finds a way to be consistently pretty funny in a way that like sometimes it's because Thor is kind of a stiff. I liked the construction guy that sees Thor and he's like, "There's something about this guy. I think he's Spider-Man."
Oh man. So yeah, good stuff. Thor. Check it out if you haven't. It's a good run to read. But I think that just about closes the book on Thor. Next time, we are going to be... Oh, hey, that Justice League movie's coming out. Yeah, we're going to read some... we've already read a lot of Justice League, and you know what? We were not very excited to read more Justice League stuff, so we thought we'd kind of flip it around a little bit and do something Justice League related. We're going to read Kingdom Come. from 1996. It is a 4-issue miniseries, which is kind of like a future version of the Justice League. And it's written by Mark Waid, art by Alex Ross. You've probably seen some of his beautiful paintings. It's very rare for him to do the inside of a book, but he did, the whole thing, the covers and the interiors. I'm excited to read it. I've never read it before. Vince, you said you've read it?
I've read it, but it was so long ago. I was kind of bored by it, but I want to give it a second chance, especially because the Justice League movie is leaning heavily on Kingdom Come for like a lot of its marketing materials. Like a lot of there's like one of the posters where they're all their faces are on there is heavily referencing the Kingdom Come, at least trade cover. I'm not sure if it was any of the single issues.
Right.
I want to give it more of a chance just because I like Mark Waid so much. I don't think I was ready for Mark Waid. Maybe.
Sure.
15
Chris, you
years
said
ago
you've
when I read
never read this?
I also have not read this. Yeah, DC is stupid, so why would I bother?
Yeah, haha, fuck you, DC. Blah, 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 we're gonna read you. Okay. All right, so cool.
Let me qualify non-Batman DC.
Okay, great. There we go. Non-Batman DC. Batman is in this, right? The future Batman.
Yeah,
but not Batman Beyond.
And not Russian Batman. It's not like an alternate.
Not Russian Batman, and not none of that. Cool. So join us next time. For Vince, Chris, and myself, Kia. Thank you so much for listening. I love you, and I want to be with you. And I'll talk to you later. Bye.